Leo, I think you had sentiments on this next one.
Oh, what is this one? Oh, Canada.
I think their concerns are right. I do think this will come to the States. This is what I'm really afraid of with what AT&T is doing. And this is what I was talking about the other day. It's like all the companies that provide cloud-based solutions or services will just stop. They'll either stop providing them altogether, or they'll scale the quality back where it's subpar. Because that's what's going on in Canada right now. Netflix has significantly lowered the quality of their streams.
The situation in Canada is a little bit more serious than it is here in the U.S. They have 25 gigabyte data caps over there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's saying that their providers have monthly caps, so I'm sure, which is happening here.
Right.
Netflix will start trying to comply.
Yeah, no, it's like, and that's the thing. Like, there
So
was.
why are we shooting Netflix? We should all be bitching at AT&T.
No, I am bitching at AT&T. I'm not.
Bitch at the ISPs, not
I'm not bitching at Netflix. Netflix is doing what they need to try and make their service still desirable. But the end result is, the service is so much.
Netflix for what they're doing.
Yeah, well, yeah, but at the end of the day, the service winds up being.
They have to.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the service winds up being so much less than it could be, which then stifles the innovation. It's like we're like this close with all the things that are going on in the codecs to stuff to, in a practical way, be able to serve HD better on real time on the fly. Which means the quality for streams universally should be raising to 1080, moving towards 4K. But instead, what these bandwidth caps are going to do is make, streams of your 1950s TV, and then regular television, which is setting the bandwidth caps, that can be high def and 4K, even though there's no reason the pipe's more than big enough, but usage caps are preventing actual innovation in that field. And I don't want that to
Absolutely. Yep. I mean, it's why I really never got into the whole streaming of movies yet. Everybody always asks me why am I not interested so much in downloading movies from iTunes or whatever. I don't want to get stuck into a routine where it's going to backfire on me because of the backbone and logistics of the internet service providers not getting their act together or expanding the existing networks to handle the load. And if we're talking about HD, which I just find funny anyway, wanting to stream a movie like that from in iTunes to your television in the den or whatever, I just think it's ridiculous. You're moving a tremendous amount of data, waiting on it and then waiting on buffers and caches to do their thing. And I just don't think it's worth it yet.
Well, no, it's not worth it yet, but if you look at some of the compression algorithms that are available, and WebM's one of them, but it's not the only one, you can actually do really high quality video, high def or better, in an amazingly small amount of data. And why it's not like Blu-ray quality. With the proper encoding, it is like high definition television quality, which means the loss factor is very small and it's still an amazing small amount of data. But it's one of those things, first, second, third gen of that is never as good as it could be. You do things like turn a 8 gig file into a 2 gig file, not a 500K file. That takes several generations of compress. Okay, here's more frames or bits we can just remove without losing quality, and so on and so forth. You don't do that overnight. That's several incarnations. But what these caps are going to do is stop that technology in its tracks where it is now, and it's like that close to being actually doable, and they're just going to go, kill it now, and nobody's going to.
It could provide an incentive. I mean, if the caps are there, obviously that means they want to fight harder to make it the compression even greater. I mean, I would think, okay, now we certainly have a limitation. It would behoove us to perfect that compression technology. I would think.
It would behoove
if they want to continue to make money.
It would behoove us to perfect the compression technology, but there's compression, and then there's how much you can compress. And the reality is that
eventually we're going to be running into the laws of physics here.
Well, no,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, no, and like the way the MP3 algorithm works is it uses audio physics. It goes, based on this peak thing, all of these sounds underneath here, 99% of people can't hear anyway, so we're just going to remove all of that sound and throw that data away, and then we get amazingly smaller. And there's a lot of things you can do like that with video. Like, okay, this hand's moving, but everything else on the screen is the exact same pixel. So we're going to only render the pixels for the hand moving, and everything else on the screen, we're going to just keep the same pixels going forward, because there's no reason to
That's what they do for things like WebM and H.264, isn't it?
But at the end of the day, the easiest way to cut quality is just have less pixels. Which means the first thing I see doing is all HD being thrown out the window. You know, we're going to go down to 720 by 480, and that's just what you're getting, which will be an order of magnitude loss of quality when everybody's starting to get used to just HD standard. As a matter of fact, that's actually what's now being pushed from pretty much every satellite and cable provider. They've actually decided, oh, HD is a good thing. HD, 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 even though our system can't handle it at all.
Well, that's the thing you mentioned earlier a couple of weeks ago about how these ISPs or content providers are basically just trying to sell their own product.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's really what they're doing with these data caps. It reminds me a lot of the old AOL hours. You know, you're allowed this many hours.
And I wouldn't mind that.
I remember those days. I'm like, yeah. I remember those days. But there's got to be a line in the sand where the consumer starts saying, you know what, this is absolutely insane. You know, I want my content and I want it for this price. And is someone going to step up to the plate and deliver it? I mean, I can just envision that if these caps keep getting worse and worse, that doesn't it begin to hurt their own business model?
Well, but see, if they're able to establish the caps like they want, okay, it'll be like the situation I had with my cable company about 18 months ago. This was their official policy. We have a customer guarantee. If for any reason you're unsatisfied, you're allowed to cancel your subscription to the only provider in town. That was their official policy. So let me get this straight. If it don't work, I can cancel it and have nothing. So I can have something that's broke, or I can have nothing. Those were your options. And that's going to be your option here. Let me see. I can have something that's less than I need, or I can have nothing at all. And, you know, given that choice, which is what this is going to be reduced to, what will most people choose? It's like, can I have some internet or no internet? It's like... It's unfortunate, but that's where I see it going. And the reality, I'm still wondering, you know, I smell something a little sick with this because I'm seeing OnLive advertised like crazy as of late. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but you can't watch a sponsored YouTube video. You can't go to... you can't go around the blogosphere without seeing at least 5 OnLive ads a day right now. And OnLive, the service, at a minimum, exceeds these bandwidth caps. It exceeds the 250 gig cap. And AT&T has invested heavily in OnLive. So I'm honestly wondering if something isn't going to come here in the next 6 months when OnLive customers start to, you know, exceed these bandwidths. Is AT&T deliberately investing in it because they know it's a service people will become hooked on and deliberately go over their bandwidth and raise AT&T's profit margins? Or are they investing in it because they plan to make it an AT&T service and make it unmetered bandwidth?
Yeah.
One thing's for sure, tinfoil hats sales will go through the roof.
So a principal point in that, as advertising increases on the internet, and then we're forced with these data caps. I mean, in essence, we're paying for the ad twice. At this point, we're paying to watch it via them consuming bandwidth that we could essentially just get rid of, and then paying for it by whatever content gets interrupted. I mean, is everybody cool with saying, well, you know, I'm fine with getting the content interrupted as we're used to in traditional television, and essentially it paid for the content that we have. But now, because it's over the internet, we are double paying for this content because it's also consuming our bandwidth.
Right, and then we're paying more for the ad, and honestly, one of the things I see becoming monumentally important going forward with these data caps is it's going to become more important than it's ever been for advertising to be relevant, because I honestly see some people, right now it bugs you, but it doesn't adversely hurt you. If you're watching content online and 90% of the advertising is nothing you're even remotely interested in. Mm-hmm. It's like, it annoys you. You're like, what planet do you think I'm even remotely interested in that? And that's a real problem with internet advertising right now. But
I can see that.
Yeah. But when
it seems like ad block is going to become important in order to.
Well, but when you get into these things, honestly, I see it hurting a lot of what are now successful internet broadcasting companies, because people will go, oh, no, wait a minute. I like the content, but I'm also paying for the ads, which are never anything I want to buy. I see that being a deal breaker for households that are low on bandwidth. They'll just stop watching the content altogether, which then will lower the PPM of that content, which then ultimately lowers the cost or rate they can charge PPM for an ad. Because the two main ways you make money on the internet are PPC, pay per click, or PPM, pay per thousand visit, views, whatever, depending on the content. And the more...
This is not a money-making decision, especially during a financial slump.
Oh, no, that's the thing. Everybody's looking to cut back right now. Yeah, let's put the brakes on the internet so people stop using it. It's like...
Yeah, I don't know if you guys heard of the Cheesecake Factory. You know, I went there the other day and they have advertisements in the menu for you know, I mean, that's getting a bit extreme in my opinion. You know, I open up the menu and the first page is an advertisement. I'm like, what the hell?
No, see, that's the real problem, in my personal opinion, with advertising now. It started off way over, and now it's gone so far in the other direction right now that you're just literally bombarded. I don't even want to call them ads anymore. They're really just noise.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to desensitize it.
Yeah, there's so many of them now, most of which are of no relevance at all, that you don't even pay attention to any of them anymore. I used to pay attention to ads. They weren't like my primary focus, but I would pay attention to them because they at least had some measure of relevance. The solution to ad revenues going down is we'll just add more ads, which then makes them more irrelevant, and then we'll put ads in more places, which then makes them more irrelevant. You know, what was it, like 5-10 years ago they were saying the average person comes across 30,000 ads in a day. I'd be willing to bet today it's over 100,000. And at that point, it literally is just noise that nobody's paying attention to.
Yeah. I've always been a person to just say, you know, look, everybody remembers when cable first started, you didn't even have these advertisements that you traditionally had. And when cable first started, the whole point of paying for cable was to extend broadcasting to you who didn't live in the traditional zones that would receive television.
Right.
And you know, and then that all went to hell. Now you watch cable, even premium channels, and you still get advertisements. And quite frankly, as a subscriber, I'm like, look, is my subscription to you not enough money for you to carry the service to me? And if so, you know, let's be upfront about it and say, look, you know, how much does it cost for your business model? I want an advertisement-free model where I'm willing to pay a subscription. And if internet comes to that, where I don't have to have advertisements, I'm willing to just pay the subscription. But don't jack me around or try to increase your profit margin by just saying, oh, well, let's slip in an ad or two here. You know?
Well, and it's gotten to the point, honestly, where I can't stand to watch some things. The thing that comes to mind off the top of my head is anywhere that's any of the Star Trek series are in syndication. Because they, especially the old ones like Next Generation, they were filmed back in the 90s, back when we had way less ad. And it's very clear, oh, this is this whole new commercial break where we cut out this scene you remember to shove in more commercials, which actually had relevance to the story, but now it's not there anymore. Don't worry about it. That scene's unimportant. And I said, I can't even stand to watch it. You know, I'd rather just get it from Netflix on DVD or streaming than I would get it from the diluted value that's coming out of the cable stream. I really am this close to canceling my cable TV.
That's the thing. They did a recent study, I guess, and it's like, what is it, 1/3 of an hour show is nothing but commercials now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
You look at anything on Netflix or Hulu or whatever, like an hour show normally is like, what, 40 minutes, 43 minutes?
Yeah.
And, and it's all advertising, and half the time it's nothing related to it. It's like, Crest, friggin' toothpaste or whatever. It's like, not even relevant ads.
Well, I get the Crest toothpaste because we all got to brush our teeth, but the ones that make no sense to me is like, I'm watching something that's clearly appealing to 16 to 30-year-old guys, and they start advertising something that is either for 90-year-old women or
That demographic.
Yeah, it's like on what planet did you think this belonged here? Like, I don't need to see the Hallmark Channel movie of the month advertised in the middle of Top Gear or something. It doesn't make sense. It's just, it doesn't. They're not even the same demographics on any planet.
Yeah, and we're fighting an enormous beast in that, the traditional heavy broadcaster, CBS, NBC, ABC, and stuff like that, their shows and their producers and owners of these companies are heavily driven in saying, well, what are our sponsors going to back? What involvement are they willing to pay up so that we can get the revenue to make like a television show as with Lost or something like that. And this becomes the main driver versus consumers. It's like now you're at a chicken and the egg type argument where, okay, is it really consumer driven, or is it that you're telling us what we're going to like, and that's been driven by...
Well, and at the end of the day, that's one of the reasons reality TV is doing so well right now, is because reality TV costs nothing to make, and they can just throw it full of ads, and it doesn't really matter that it's an order of magnitude lower quality content, because it's also an order of magnitude higher profitable content.
Yeah, exactly. It's cheaper to make, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I keep hoping for this day that Americans finally get sick of reality TV.
I know.
It's like, okay, moving on to the Microsoft world, because we've depressed everybody enough.
That story's happening.
Yeah. Okay, you know what? This is pretty much the theme for what's going on in the platform wars world right now. Everybody's suing everybody again.
What else is new?
I know. Yeah. Of course, Microsoft, in true fashion, has topped everybody. They are suing the Nook for, to quote, having to do with browsing and downloading interface patent violations. Boy, if that just isn't a blanket night and day.
I would say that a lot of these suits have validity, but the problem is like you do run into a point to where, good Lord, there's only a certain amount of ways we can move a mouse. There's only a certain amount of ways we can show something on a screen. We're not yet to broadcast telepathy to people, so let's stick to the real world. There are just so many damn avenues.
MS was granted the patent, so they obviously have valid grounds on which to sue the Nook. But like you're saying, the real problem here is the Patent and Trademark Copyright Office is not doing their damn effing job. They should take one look at that patent and go, that's not specific enough. Try again.
Exactly. I agree.
Because when you start issuing these broad patents like this, okay, I have this idea if I click a thingamabob and do a whatchamajigget. Define a thingamabobby and a whatchamajigget.
Why would they patent and be able to copyright App Store? And I know, because now there's a three-way lawsuit over that.
Yeah. What is it? Apple suing Amazon, and I forget who the other contender is.
Microsoft has been suing Apple because it's, or the other way around, for the same App Store thing.
Right, which is, and that again, it's another patent that should never, a trademark that should never have been granted.
Yeah, we're happy with another $100,000 or $200,000 for, because in the end they all know reality, so they're just going to say, screw it, just head on to court, they pass around 300 grand here, 500 grand here, and all that, and everybody goes home and happy.
No, wait. It's not showing on the screen right, but Leo's put up this great cartoon. Sorry, couldn't do my homework. I didn't know whether the solution I had found was already patented. That's perfect right there. Yep, there it goes.
Sorry, I thought the numbers were copyrighted.
Yeah. You know, I wasn't sure if my 3 looked different enough.
HP sues RIM over this playbook thing, because I immediately knew that I was like, wow, the RIM gestures and all this other stuff is extremely WebOS-like, but I'm happy to see so far that HP is just like, they called a spade and said, you guys are doing exactly the same thing. And RIM's answer is like, well, there's only so many ways to do something. I would say that RIM there is validity in HP saying, look, man, no, we've got that. You can easily use a button here or there. The thing that I didn't like was Apple saying that anything dragged, if you read their patent, if like an image or something that's dragged just anywhere to unlock a device, they somehow own that patent.
Oh, no. Their patent's even more vague than that. And, to bring Apple into this and stuff, you know what's so stupid about this? If we set the Wayback Machine back to when Apple was suing Microsoft and then both of them were being sued by Xerox,
That is the Wayback Machine.
Didn't the courts rule pretty much that the idea of a GUI wasn't patentable?
That's right.
So it's like, wait a minute. So there's a legal precedent in U.S. law that says this isn't patentable or trademarkable, yet the patent office is still issuing things that say it is.
I know. It's money, dude. I mean, you gotta look at it. It's like, well, they receive a considerable amount of funds per patent that they issue. My mother's in patent law, and she's been doing it for several years, mostly energy and with oil companies and stuff like that. But there's a tremendous amount of money that's involved in filing and the whole legal process of getting it there. And actually, what my mother says is that having the letters TM actually means that it's still pending. Like if you have like a logo of some like TM, that means it's pending. And that the only time it's foolproof is when you get the R for registered.
Right. And even then, it's how much money do you have to go sue everybody over it?
No, but that in itself, and that process to go from TM to R is a long time and a lot of money.
Well,
we all love IP law. It's great.
Yeah.
But the point is that look, they need to be more specific because we're going to start running into this. Look, there's no more ways a human being can use their finger, for crying out loud.
Well, it's like the thing with Apple that you mentioned. Okay, the unlock screen on Android is completely different than on iOS.
Oh no, but did you read their patent? If you drag anything, if you do anything on the screen, you just placing your finger and it moving. It's done.
Yeah, but basically the vagueness of the Apple patent in terms of that would cover any possible anything you could do when interfacing with a touchscreen.
Oh man, I hate patents.
No, patents are good. I mean, they preserve innovation. I mean, obviously, if you invented something and it was something very critical and you put a tremendous amount of effort and you'd like some sort of protection, patents always will expire.
There's people in the open source community who hate patents. I think they have the wrong idea because honestly, if I create something and I want to open source it, I want to have the patent so that I can actually dictate, no, that's going to be open sourced. Because if I don't have the patent, somebody else can then steal my idea, patent it, and tell me I can't distribute it.
Yeah, but the argument of open source is that 2 + 2 equals 4, and that it's common knowledge. It shouldn't be something that's intellectual property. I agree with you that I like intellectual property in that, look, I myself as a programmer have quite a few software products that hospitals use, and by golly, I want to protect it. I put a lot of my effort into it, and I will go against the open source community and say, yeah, I get what your point is, that you think a lot of things should just be common knowledge. It's open. Like we open encyclopedia. We all know that this information is there. It's ubiquitous. Everybody can use it, no problem. But I want mine, in that my incentive was, look, I'm building a better product. I want protection for building a better product. Now I'm going to try to do my best within the other laws to split ethically. But this open source, you can make money from it, but it does not, I think, give the incentive to want to say, hey, I want something in return. Now, I know a lot of open source guys will come back and flame me for it, because there is a great deal of technology that is out there that does come from people willing to share themselves. But sharing, for me, doesn't pay my bills. It doesn't send my kids to school and put food on my table. So, that's the way.
And there are plenty of business models that are literally built on splitting the line between the two of those, so that you're doing both. And I kind of like those, because they have both the ethics of the one, and like you say, at the end of the day, I have this hankering to eat.
Yeah.
Well, here's another thing. As far as the whole IP thing, is the way that it's all lumped in together. Okay, we're going to trademark, copyright, and patent all as one, and call it IP. They're not calling a duck, they're calling a shit a duck.
Well, as soon as they said you can trademark the term footlong, I figured we'd all just lost our minds,
Yeah, exactly. I know. But it's going to be, I like to embrace the open source community, because they, in so many ways, do protect a lot of what we like to keep free and open, and are the checks and balances to the ethics of intellectual property, because it is out of hand. It's totally out of hand in many regards, and that's what this argument is. But the thing of it is it's so black and white when it comes to term, when you meet a hardcore open source person versus somebody who really would like to embrace kind of both intellectual property and open source, and say, you know what, I'm willing to give this much of what I've learned to an open source community, and say, yes, take it, do it as you will, and share it, and all that other stuff. And I will defend it, saying that, yeah, you can certainly make money in open source, but in doing that, you have to be prepared for competition, and almost what.
Well, no, and at
quick competition, because there's so many forks, that if it is truly open source, and somebody else can say, I'm going to take this code and I'm going to make the same identical product, because we're under the same license, that we can't have anything proprietary here. And then once it's not another person, you're almost leveling out the
Well, and at the end of the day, it depends what your business model is based on. If your business model doesn't have a problem with competition, and in fact competition actually makes you stronger, and there's plenty of business models where that is true, that not only is open sourcing ethically good, but it's good for your business model. It winds up making greater adoption. At the end of the day, it indirectly sends more people back to you, because you're the actual source. So they're like, but it depends what kind of business model you're doing.
Well, let me say, go ahead. All right. Well, I was going to say that, in graduate studies of economics, what we call perfect competition. Open source is essentially probably the closest thing to what we call a perfect competition. In a perfect competition, nobody has incentive to open a business, and therefore it's like a self-collapsing idea. In that, well, why do they continue to make business? Well, it's simple as that accounting doesn't account for opportunity costs. Now, the problem with open source is that open source inherently has opportunity costs. The second you give your code out, you've bought the opportunity cost. Then you can't have a monetary value on that, and that's why accounting doesn't count opportunity costs, because it's an exponential variable that you don't know what's happening. But open source eventually will lead you to a perfect competition, in that the price for your product in the service business model, no matter how you base it, unless the service you're providing is proprietary, and that you have found some unique way to support this open source, you will level out the price for your product almost to zero. And thus you have this perfect competition, which it's all theory in graduate studies of economics, and perfect competitions versus what accounting considers an opportunity cost. But I always found that open source is very inherent and grasps the whole idea of opportunity cost.
Yeah. Well, and like you say, you're getting into some higher economics there, and the reality is,
I love you. Anyway, yeah.
And the reality is, if the one thing anybody who starts getting into higher economic theories will acknowledge, oh my God, common sense has no place in this room. I get it. I know how to get an A in this class. Common sense has no place in this room.
They call economics dismal science for a reason.
I know. Because some of the assumptions made in economic classrooms. Oh dear Lord. It's like, have you been outside lately? Oh no, I have a blackboard. It tells me everything about what outside looks like.
I mean, there's validity to it in that, in so many forks, in that, all right, there's so much competition that you will hit an equilibrium. Is that equilibrium enough to stay?
Well, and at the end of the day, there's a reason some Linux distros are popular and some of them are pretty much dead-end projects. At the end of the day, the real driving force behind a Linux distro isn't the Linux kernel. It isn't all the open source packs that are put together to assemble it. It's the community and the core programmers behind that distro, which is an intangible service that isn't exactly what I'd call proprietary, but you as the user who's backing that particular Linux OS is invested in the flavor that community provides, which is its little bit of fun. And somebody can copy that, but they're still not going to be those people, which means they can copy today but not tomorrow. That's more a Linux topic than son. So let's okay. Anybody?
Well, I think darkness wanted to say something.
Do you want to say something, Dark?
So what?
What do you want to
Get something to say.
All I have to say is the way, at least in my experience with dealing with the open source guys, and believe me, I have no problem bashing the open source guys.
I'll bash the purists.
Okay, yes, the purists, loss only idiots, zealots. But anyway, if you take something like Red Hat, just as an example, look at, you got CentOS, that's all the free and, GPL stuff that they are based off from Red Hat. You have Unbreakable Linux from Oracle. Everyone equates Linux on the server end usually with Red Hat. Why? Because of trademark and branding. That's how they made their name.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And, they built services, they do have proprietary extensions. Oh, God.
They have to. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Something has to be unique about you.
Oh,
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, this whole movement within the open source community complaining about this open core model, I think it's like Jaspersoft, that's another open core type business. It's how you build a product. Here's what we're going to give you, do what you will with it, but we're going to keep this out from that.
Yeah.
And they say it works for that, man. I say cool.
Well, and which model you're going with just depends on so many factors. It's not even funny. Like I said, at the end of the day, it really depends what your overall business model is.
Yeah. But I do want to reiterate that, because I know I talked about innovation. There is an incredible amount of brilliance that comes out of the open source community, where money is not a factor, and it's just their passion that drives it to make something better. And that's very, very true. But when the rubber does meet the road and we do have to employ people, the incentive to, like you were saying, to want to eat has to come into play. We can give so much of ourselves as charity and then say, you know what, I need to feed my kids now.
Well, and to be honest, one of the best models I've loved is it marries both together, and that is it acknowledges that stuff takes, in some cases, money to develop. And basically they say, well, it cost us Y man-hours to make it. So we need to sell X copies. And once we hit Y number, we've recouped our costs, and we have costs for developing the next version. So then we're going to open source the base to everybody, so you can do and add and do whatever you want, because now it's paid for. We've it's paid for. Now let's let true innovation take place. We're not going to stand in the way of innovation. And, we're going to make what we think the next chapter should be and let true competition take place. And if somebody does better than us, well, you're going to go with them.
And see if you agree with this, though. If everything were truly the purest mentality in that all code was equivalent to just shared and public domain science, there would be no place really for programmers as a model of saying this is paid labor. There would be that labor, and a programmer would get paid would just be dictated as like to some flat level of whatever X amount of dollars across the board, leaving it to really just hardware being the uniqueness at the end of the day. But I can guarantee you the hardware's going to say, well, you know what, I want something proprietary attached to me. Because if I'm going to invest this much, what about my hardware is going to sell your software in some sort of package? And I need to protect my ends here because, hey, if I've got something special in my hardware that company X doesn't have, by golly, your little open source code is not going to license in and say, well, because I had to write all these APIs to this hardware, now it's common knowledge. So that's, I guess, where I always ended up with my own internal arguments over open source is that it's going to hit a wall somewhere. Because somewhere is going to demand proprietary. And then once you hit that wall, it doesn't work exponentially with the whole open license idea, at least to me.
And personally, that's where I see where the GPL is the issue, and I see a BSD license as truly being free and open source.
Well, I'd say that's one of the things. There's GPL versus GPL2 versus GPL, which is which is something the GPL is trying to get locked out because indirectly, I mean, that's the real reason a lot of open source stuff isn't allowed in the iOS store, because part of the nature of that proprietary store directly contradicts the terms of overzealous GPLs. It's like, and it's actually doing the exact opposite of what it was intended to do because of an indirect, overt loophole.